Hi everyone, welcome to the Your Life Unfiltered podcast with your hosts Kitu Kafari and Deepan Jain. In this podcast, we dig deep into the life experiences of our guests to connect the dots between their early upbringing and what they're doing today. Today we have a very special guest, Sorab Kochar. So Sorab's an award-winning DJ and he has a lot of other side hustles and stuff going on as well. Sorab, you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I guess people get it confused all the time. I'm actually not a DJ. I'm an MC, but I do run a DJ company, and that company is called Sharoz International. Got it on the shirt here, a little plug. Um, as well as yep. So it's a DJ company based in the tri-state area. We're a bit boutique in nature, just in terms of the way that we interact with our clientele. Also, kind of like the way that we go about doing our events. Um, we'd like to take a personal approach to our event curation and planning and implementation. On the other end, my day job is I work for an AI startup. That startup is in healthcare. And the idea for the startup is that we like to serve underserved communities. And we're trying to build a data set around it um, so that we can find those underserved folks who typically wouldn't go to a doctor or get like any preventative health checks done. And we go out and send folks like nurses to go do assessments and then checks and then have them come in, either come in or we do diagnostics remotely. And the idea is to overall decrease the cost of care and make sure that they are healthy. And that's kind of like the opposite of what's kind of going on in healthcare today. So those are my two sort of main things. But I dabble in other stuff. So I'm I'm an open book. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
First of all, Saurabh, thanks for the great introduction there. Great to have you on the show. Before we talk about anything you're doing today, let us go back a few years. Talk to us a little bit more about your early childhood, early upbringing. What kind of environment did you grow up in? Any early motivations, inspirations that probably stuck with you that you still kind of look back to from this day?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in India. I was born in a town called Amritsar. It's the capital of Punjab. I'm Punjabi myself. My folks actually moved here when I was approximately about 2 years old. So I came here at a fairly young age. Um, and my earliest memories is I started going to preschool in this town called Passaic, which is in North Jersey. It was actually a Catholic preschool, so we used to go to church there. I remember like that entire experience of like I knew I was Hindu, but then I had to learn like the customs of a new religion. Like it expanded my mind from a very young age. And then obviously like the diversity in North Jersey is just like such an influence. And that really like that thread kind of carried on throughout my life. And honestly, I'm so grateful to have been from New Jersey and then being raised in North Jersey and just like the impact of all different cultures, creeds, ethnicities, nationalities. Like you really take all those and then it kind of like embodies you into like a very secular person. So yeah, that was really kind of how I was raised and I love it. From a young age, I also got into like performing arts, entertainment. I've been in it from a young age. I did Aria, if you guys know about that, Aria Dance Academy. And then I sort of just had a knack artistically for music, so was always about it. And then I guess that just naturally transitioned me into starting a DJ company one day in the future. So that's kind of how the cookie crumbles, as they say.
Okay, and you started it, I believe you said right before the pandemic started, right? So how did you see the growth happening during the pandemic? Was that a setback or did it actually work in your favor?
Um, yeah, so it's quite interesting. Obviously, starting a business before the pandemic is definitely not ideal, especially where you have people coming together. Um, it definitely was a setback. It was a hindrance for sure. In 2017, we sort of ideated that we wanted to do something. We had been freelancing in the industry for quite some time, as early as 2010. We started dabbling. Actually, my business partner has been doing this for even longer than I have. But then we decided to kind of like go off on our own, do our own thing. 2019, we really started hitting it strong. I think we took on approximately like close to 30 to 40 events that year. In 2019, it was a big year. 2020 is where we had, obviously, COVID started um, around March. So due to that fact, we kind of had to push off a lot of the weddings that we had booked through 2020. So like those trickled into 2021 as well as 2022. 2021 really was like a lot of the people who were willing to go forward with the risk. And then 2022 is where we implemented the rest of the events. So yeah, definitely a hindrance for a DJ company, but the nice part is that the overhead is not heavy. We kind of invested smartly in the beginning, and we weren't kind of digging ourselves a hole in terms of like huge investments or getting services that people wouldn't necessarily be into. Um, so in that aspect, I think we were okay, but in general, I think it definitely was a setback. But nonetheless, we had a huge year, 2022, coming in with all those COVID weddings, and then we just knocked them all out of the park. So it was great.
Okay, and then for you personally, is there any reason you prefer MCing versus DJing, or do you know how to do both, or you just prefer one or the other?
I do know how to DJ. I prefer to MC just in this is where my comfortability lies. I just don't enjoy the practice of DJing. I guess it's to each their own. I would much rather be out in front, interacting with all the guests and the audiences and making sure that I'm a proper liaison between all the families. I really like playing that role, as opposed to like being at the booth and kind of it's a little bit more technical, like kind of figuring out the nuances of like when a song needs to be played. I'm a little more lackadaisical in terms of like the way that I would like to be at an event. Like I think it's more fun for me to be an MC, and I just think I'm better at it. So there's plenty of DJs in the industry. I don't know how many MCs you can find. It's a much smaller group.
Yeah.
That's for sure. That's for sure. So, you talked about you also work at a AI startup. So, my first question is, how do you manage all of this, right? So you run this entire organization on the side, and you're also working full time. How do you kind of balance between the two?
Honestly, it is a difficult juggling act. I won't tell you that I do it perfectly every time, but the idea is that during the day I'm working my day job 9 to 5. I do have the ability to work remote, so that is a huge part of why this is possible. Um, and then the evenings I'm taking mostly like client calls. If we're
Hmm.
planning out itineraries, if I'm talking to the bride and groom about any questions that they might have, or if there's any consultations, we're taking care of that there. And then obviously doing the events Friday evenings, Saturdays for a full day wedding, and then Sundays for any smaller parties. That's kind of how it works. I feel like it's sort of almost ideal to be. There's like a good balance because it's like weekends versus weekdays. A
Right.
lot of people do ask me at events like, "Hey, like, is this your full time thing?" And I take it as a compliment because we're just that good. But I think that in this day and age, I feel like almost like without a side hustle, you're kind of like setting yourself up for failure. You should have like almost multiple streams of income or different things going on for you so that you can just hedge your risk in a certain way. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
how I try and balance it at least.
Okay. What about in terms of the location of events? Is it mostly local, or do you have to like fly around the country or even internationally?
Um, I would say a majority are local within the tri-state area. We are fortunate that there is a huge South Asian density and population here. Here in New York, PA, New Jersey, primarily, and then venture out to Connecticut, Maryland, Rhode Island, upstate New York on occasion, and then Florida is another hotspot.
Miami, I'm
Um,
assuming, right? Miami.
yep, absolutely, absolutely. Miami, Orlando, Tampa, and then Cancun is like the new thing. Cancun and Cabo, or I don't even know if it's the new thing, but it's definitely a consistent um, location for Indian weddings specifically, or mixed culture weddings. I have done Italy as well as Greece. Um,
Wow, that's awesome.
so the Europe thing is just a little bit more difficult. The event planning and there's a few companies that have really established themselves in Mexico, so they just get it. They know it. The hospitality is there.
Hmm.
It's a little bit different when you go out to Europe. So um, yeah, that's pretty much the locations that we mostly work at.
Okay, great, great. So I have an interesting question for you now.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've done quite a few events by now. Let's call it in the hundreds, right? So is there any specific event in recent history that really stands out to you? Maybe it was an unusual blend of people or an unusual style of wedding. So I'm really interested to see, like, after having MC'd and DJ'd so many weddings, is there any wedding in particular that really stands out in your mind?
For me, I think, yeah, I mean, there's quite a few. I think a really enriching part about being in this industry is just like the way that, and I'm noticing that it's becoming more frequent and more consistent, is that different cultures are blending. Um, and, we're kind of like on the forefront of that just because we get to experience that at events all the time. I think, I did a Mormon South Indian wedding. That one was really interesting, just in terms because like it's just so culturally different. So anytime I have a
Wow.
case like that, I find it to be fascinating, and then I like to play that. Like, are you comfortable? Like, are you aware of what's going on in terms of like, the traditions or like the ceremonies, what have you. Um, Additionally, a really nice one that I did was a Puerto Rican Nepali wedding. That
Okay,
was
wow.
also a you'd be surprised. Sometimes some of these genres of music they really blend really well.
Hmm.
Um, you
Wow.
know, like reggaeton with like some beats, like desi beats that really like
Hmm.
have like some bounce to it.
Yeah.
It's really nice, and it actually makes the DJ's job a little bit more fun that they can like blend genres that they're not used to blending. Otherwise, you just run like your typical Bollywood playlist or Punjabi playlist or something like that, and
Hmm.
it's almost like a little bit more of a challenge when you get something interesting like that. Um, I've done some interesting cultures where like I've experienced things that I've never seen before.
Hmm.
Like one time I did a wedding where it was part of the wedding to do a dance with knives, and like the father of the bride was dancing with knives, um, and yeah, I mean he was like extremely skilled, but it was something that was very fascinating, and I'm
Hmm.
not even entirely sure what kind of culture it is. I believe it was some sort of Middle Eastern. So
Got
yeah,
it.
that's pretty much like what I would consider different when I see different cultures blending. Um, mhm.
Amazing.
All
Well,
right,
I
that's
have
really
a
cool.
yeah, I have a related question related to the to what you just talked about. So as an MC, you have to basically engage and energize your crowds as basically a part of your key part of your job. So how do you approach this art of emceeing, and what techniques do you use to connect with the audience? Create a vibrant atmosphere during live performances. What are your secrets?
I think for me, a large part of it is building that energy and anticipation and excitement. I
Hmm.
feed off of it personally, and then I kind of just funnel that back. I mirror it to the guests and the audience. If they're showing me love, they're giving me love because they're there to celebrate that bride and groom, and they really love them. So it just comes together and culminates into like this wonderful explosion of a package. Um, that's kind of how it works for me.
Hmm.
Additionally, if we ever see like the mood in the room is dampering, or maybe people are tired because it's been like consecutive days of events, I will personally utilize some humor, whether it's self-deprecating or I see something funny happening. I'll be keen to call it out. Like if an uncle is standing in the back and he should be sitting, I will let him know, and I'll try to make it entertaining while I do it. It's yeah. I think keeping it light is fun, formal but engaging, as well as if I can point somebody out within the guests and I can have some sort of engagement with them in some sort of way, something interactive. I think people like being spoken to, so that's really key. And then also, it gives like a human factor to the whole thing. It's not like you're just talking at people; it's you're talking with them.
Mhm.
I think that's really the key in the art of emceeing, is that people at the end of the event, they'll come up to you and be like, "How do you know the bride and groom? Are you family?" You'd be like, "No, I'm actually just an MC."
So you actually bring up a really interesting point, and that is there's a big amount of showmanship involved with being an MC, right? Because you have to hype up the crowd, you have to read the room and kind of realize when you have to fine tune your approach, maybe the words you use, maybe the amount of energy you put behind those words, or calling people out to get them laughing, things like that. So I guess my question based on that is, you also mentioned earlier growing up you were always attracted to the creative arts. Can you see all this experience you've had as an MC translating into some other creative pursuits down the road? So it could be like stand-up comedy, because you mentioned coming up with jokes on the spot, or self-deprecating humor, things like that. So do you see or have any interest in like other areas of creative arts besides MCing?
Um, I do dabble in music. I think that's where I would put more of my emphasis. I think right now we're in a really interesting wave of like Afrobeat, tribal, Indian throwback, like this new genre that's kind of being formed. Shout out to the Indo Warehouse guys who are doing something really, really cool. No Nuzzer out in LA. That's kind of like where I would want to dive in, production wise. I think that's sort of like my next frontier in this area. I do have a project out on Spotify, um, which is just for my music. I sing, I play a little guitar. So I've produced one project. It's called Lessons. I dropped it back in, I want to say, 2017 or 2018. Actually, I wrote a lot of those songs back in high school, so they are quite old. Hope I'm not lagging here. Um, but I have another project that I'll be dropping in the summer, late summer. It's called, I'll let you guys premiere. It's called Under Over. It's going to be a completely different project. So that initial project was a little bit more Indian alternative. This project's going to be more hip hop and I guess pop, top 40 sort of kind of thing. So music is definitely that frontier for me. So one of my songs actually got picked up by a TikTok streamer. So
Oh,
it's almost
nice.
sitting at like 75,000 streams. So shout out my fans in Latin America.
That's actually awesome. It's always crazy to me how a song can become a hit just because it goes trending on a social media platform like TikTok. It's crazy to me. I remember like one of the original TikTok hits was the Old Town Road. It came just off
Mhm.
of TikTok, right when TikTok launched.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I actually don't even know how they found it or picked it up or anything. I think one of the main things like people say about music is that, it's like a continuous pursuit of marketing. You can literally pick up your first song that, because it could be a new song to someone who's never heard it before. So, you know, continue to push it, continue to push it, continue to push it. I think that's like the hardest part for artists, to push their old stuff because it's an evolution, right? We're always evolving as people. We're changing. Our tastes are changing. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point about their old songs as well, right? Because the example that comes to mind is the Adams Family, right? With Jenny Ortega, the performance she did with the hands.
Hmm.
So the song that went really viral on Instagram and on TikTok was not even a song from the movie. It was the song, I forgot what it's called, but it was by Lady Gaga. So I found that really interesting how a really old song for like 10 years old actually went viral to choreo that was in a movie.
Yeah, and you'll see most of the songs on Instagram or TikTok that are trending now. There's just like little samples of stuff that was like, they're throwbacks. They're throwbacks with like a twist. Um, that's really just
Right.
been the thing these days, and I think there's like a nostalgia factor, but also Gen Z hasn't heard this stuff before,
Yeah.
so it's new
Right.
to them. It's new to them, but the
Yeah.
millennials are like, oh wait, this is that song. Like I heard it in like, in fifth grade we used to vibe to this, or in seventh grade, middle school we used to vibe to this.
Oh
So
yeah.
I like it. I love
Absolutely.
it.
Same thing with old shows too, shows from the 90s. Like I see TikToks coming all the time from scenes from Friends or scenes from like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or something like that. So that's you're right. I think there is a big component of nostalgia because I think you hit it nail on the head. It's nostalgia for millennials, but then it's completely new for a lot of Gen Z. So it's interesting.
I think I think additionally we're going through like an IP shortage. You know, you see a lot of these huge conglomerates, you know, NBC, Disney, all of them. They're kind of like shuffling around all their IPs. They're like, what can we bring back? Like Jurassic Park has had like so many new movies these days that and they're all terrible, but they're just banking on the nostalgia factor, right? I mean, obviously Spider-Man continues to be a hit. Um, but yeah, Adam's Family is a good example, right? These are all things that used to be a thing, but they're just bringing them back. Some work, most of them don't.
Yeah, really good point.
I think that's because of the streaming craze that's going on, right?
Right.
So since they all have to differentiate in certain aspects, they need to be like, you know, what's our big blockbuster item?
Mhm.
And some of them have
Star
it, some
Wars
of them
too,
don't.
right? Lots of Star Wars movies the last couple of years.
Yep. I think because investing in something new and for people, especially as time gets more limited, we just don't know what to spend our time in unless the word of mouth is excellent.
Right. And I actually, just to build off of that, I was actually listening to a news podcast, I don't know, a few weeks ago. I think a lot of the other companies also are tapping into nostalgia, right? So it's probably McDonald's bringing back their old menu or some item from the past, and Wendy's bringing stuff. So it's just not limited to the artistic content or music and
Hmm.
movies, but also it's just going much beyond that. To your point.
Right. I personally am a huge fan of the South Asian music thing, you know, picking up old songs and then dropping them
Hmm.
on like a tribal beat, creating something special around that. I'm sold. I'm 100% in there.
Yeah. Well, another piece of that is actually, is it truly nostalgia? Because in some cases it is, but the other piece of it, sometimes I think is manufactured nostalgia. And what I mean by that is the example you gave before, where it's elements of the past, but with a twist. So they're banking on people recognizing it, right? Because people tend to like things that they're familiar with or have seen before. But at the same time, they're creating that nostalgia even more by adding a modern twist to it. So I think a lot of it is actually nostalgia, but then a lot of it's also manufactured nostalgia.
It, yeah, that's true. I mean, do you think that you know, does that make it less genuine? Do you think?
It doesn't make it less genuine, but what I do think is that what they're doing is extremely intentional,
Hmm.
right? So it's like it's one thing to just like like put on replays of like Family Guy or something like that, right? Or Family Matters or not Family Guy, but they say Family Matters or Fresh Prince of Bel Air or something where it's pure nostalgia. And it's another thing to like restart it because even Fresh Prince of Bel Air, they're re-kicking out the series.
Bel Air, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're just calling it Fresh Prince now. But they're so like that's manufactured, right? Because it's not just nostalgia of doing replays. They're actually trying to reignite that franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harry
Right.
Potter, Lord of the Rings, it's just all over the place. So
Harry
Harry Potter's
Potter,
nice.
there's going to be a series on Max now, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully they're not redoing the Daniel Radcliffe story because and this might be a hot take, but I don't think certain things need to be touched. Like
Yeah.
that Harry Potter series is perfect in its own element and essence,
Mhm.
and it wasn't even that long ago that
Yep.
it was a thing. You know, like I don't recall when the last movie dropped, but
Probably like 12 years ago.
why would you want to reboot that? You know,
Exactly.
like I wouldn't personally.
Same thing with Pokemon. Actually, they're rebooting that apparently.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I think
Some
to your
things
point,
just
right,
need to
what
be
you
touched.
said, yeah, what you said before, right? It's just for people, there's so much content out there. It's just everybody's fighting for the eyeballs, and just it's easier to catch eyeballs with stuff which is familiar than bring up something entirely new and just ask people to kind of watch it and just really go crazy after it. So it will take a lot of effort to basically do that versus just bring up something that's already out there.
Yeah, you have the brand already. That's why it's a lot easier.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like marketing spend at the end of the day, right? Like this is gonna like not cost me as much to make it popular. I think one good example is the Mario movie.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
which was a huge hit, right? Critics, it's funny because critics didn't really
Hmm.
like it. They were like, hey, like some of the aspects, could have been done better, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the audience loved it. Me personally, loved it. Huge fan. I actually saw it in 4D. Have you heard of what 4D is?
No, what is
No.
that?
So 4D is, I think it's a Regal thing, and it's where the entire seat moves. So there's like a row of four seats, and the
Oh, okay.
entire seat move. They vibrate, and I thought it was like a perfect movie for that. I've never seen it before in 4D, but
Oh, wow.
spoiler alert: the Mario Kart scene, yeah, that was perfect. You feel like you're on the car.
Yeah, that's
Oh my
awesome.
God,
It's like
that's
a roller
perfect
coaster.
movie for that. Yeah.
Roller coaster while watching a movie. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Also, Sense. They do Sense as well.
Oh, right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. I mean, we can talk more about this particular topic, but just something came to my mind. I think this manufactured nostalgia terminology, Ketul, I think just if I look back, I think it's been happening for a while now. Like I can recall a few movies which have been made in the past, but they actually remade them, right? So the Lion King, for example, Pink Panther
Oh
franchise, or like
yeah, the live
there's so
action version.
many.
That's true.
They actually with the obviously Lion King came in the 90s for the first time. Animation wasn't that sophisticated at that point what it is now, so actually probably they made it again, and obviously the other one was also really a huge hit, as was the old one. So maybe they're just it's an idea which we're probably noticing now more because there's so much more content, but the idea is already out there. It's already kind of floating around.
And
Yeah.
I think it's not even just the movie. It's I think they're reigniting these because of copyright reasons as well, right? So, for
Right.
example, a lot of the old copyrights they're gonna start falling off the cliff and all that. So
Hmm.
they can't. So, for example, I'll use the example of Mickey Mouse. Like the original Mickey Mouse, the copyright that's gonna expire. But every time they rebrand it and recreate it, they get a new copyright issued. You get what I'm saying? It's like extending.
Yep.
So it's like a different copyright for each version of that character. So I
Right.
think part of it is also good business in the sense of if you release different iterations of the same brand, same character, if it's like a comic or something like that, you're able to get a new copyright issued potentially and then delay the amount of loss you have from the copyright going into the public domain.
I want to piggyback off my last hot take. I think it's only acceptable for them to make a new version of a movie is
Hmm.
if the old version suffered from a lack of technological ability at that time. Like, let's say it was a movie created in the early 90s, and this conceptually couldn't have been created because the technology just wasn't there. I
Hmm.
think redoing those kinds of scenarios is where the focus should be in the industry.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a good point. I
Harry Potter
agree.
seems like an overkill. You know, if we go off of that, 100%. I'm with you on this one. I don't think they should have, they should remake the Harry Potter franchise.
Like
Maybe,
Ah.
I think the first Jurassic Park movie was perfect, right? I
Mm-hmm.
thought the second one was also decent to pretty good. There was some good spots, and then after that, it just like it kept going downhill. And the Chris Pratt versions, like how many times can you see a dinosaur, eat somebody? Like it doesn't get more realistic than a certain sort of level that they've reached already, right? So I think that wow factor is gone. So at that point, like it has to come down to the storytelling, and if the storytelling isn't there, you just can't grip the audience.
Unless they find a way to do it well in 4D, then it will be
oh
fun.
yeah, that's true.
I'll take it. Maybe you get some like some Jurassic, I don't know, sense
Oh,
going on.
imagine fragrances.
Yeah.
Mmm.
No, exactly.
Fragrance.
That's what they did during the Bowser scenes in Mario. They had like a certain scent, so it would just like connect your senses. Be like, oh, okay, this is a Bowser scene. You're at Bowser's castle, or
Oh,
if you're
I
in the
just
Mushroom Garden.
so I was imagining like mushrooms, and it's like you just have to smell of mushrooms enter the room.
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Oh
It's
man,
pretty
Because
cool.
I almost want to watch it now in 4D. I don't know. I'll check it out.
is it still in theaters? If it is, I
I
kind of want
don't
to see it
I don't
now.
know.
Maybe not.
Maybe it came out like mid-April something. I don't know. Sometime in April or March. So it's probably been a while since. All right. Great discussion, but I guess we can come back to what we were talking about before. Not that this is not important. Tell us about uh, any interesting client or situation where you actually had to say no to them. Just you couldn't take their event for whatever reason. You didn't align with their approach, or there was something off. You it didn't align with your philosophy on how you approach events and so on.
Hmm.
Has there been any event like that?
I, I wouldn't say that's really the case. I think in this
Hmm.
industry, really, the approach is that anything and everything can be done
Right,
within
right,
a
right.
certain bounds. Even if I personally cannot do it, I can find you someone who can do it. If I can do it and I can do it well, then I shall move forward with it. If not, I'll refer out. I think the nice part about this industry, it's like a big family,
Hmm.
dysfunctional as it is, but we all sort of know each other's, we work with each other's, and it's kind of nice to have that camaraderie between vendors. Um, you
Right.
know, if I'm not the best fit, that's no big deal. Like I'm not gonna take any, I'm not attached to the outcome here. I'm not gonna take all that kind of pressure. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna output that to somebody who I think could do it better.
Right, right.
So I don't think there's any, all shapes and sizes of events. So I don't think that there's ever a case where it's like, hey, this doesn't align with my vision.
Got it, got it. I guess going off of that, have you faced any obstacles when, just organizing these events when it comes to dealing with other vendors or just dealing with clients, and how have you like figured out a way to kind of overcome those obstacles over time, if any?
Yeah, I think something that tends to happen, and no flack to anybody specific, but let's say a vendor grows to the extent that maybe they're recognizable, they have some sort of established repertoire in the industry. They hopefully aren't like this, but on occasion I've noticed that they're a little bit difficult to work with.
Hmm.
Um, they think that they deserve some sort of, like, I don't know, accolade. Therefore, their time is extremely valuable. But I feel like everyone's time is valuable. Therefore, we should just be respectful in that sort of manner. Um, I personally haven't had many of these sort of transactions. I think
Hmm.
most people are fairly easy to work with. I think one thing that would be nice if I could give a piece of advice is photographers and videographers. I know they're very busy, but try and work with your DJ companies to get them some content, because at the end of the day, what they're just doing is cross-channel marketing you, and that helps both people. It's like a win-win scenario. I know you're
Hmm.
not getting necessarily paid what you would consider like proper money for an edit or something like that, but you're already in the content. You're looking at it, right? So if you see something that a DJ company could use, I would just give it to them. There's no reason to be selfish about it. You're out there capturing the content. The DJ company is performing. They're making sure the event goes well. So
Hmm.
hit them up. They're gonna love you for it.
That makes sense. So to all the photographers and videographers out there, we'll definitely echo this
It's
message to them.
I was gonna actually build on Sarah's point. I think it's a really good point because when it
Hmm.
comes to networking and strengthening relationships, a lot of times the actions you take are sacrificial. It's a sacrifice to you and a benefit to someone else, but that's how you establish that connection to begin with. And then usually is when you extend a favor to someone else, they reciprocate. So completely agree with you with
Yeah,
that logic. It's
I'm outpouring love in multiple directions, right? Like to the vendors, to the clients. I'm letting everybody know, hey, look, listen, we're just trying to all help each other's and be on like the same wavelength and flow. Sometimes I get the love reciprocated, sometimes I don't, and it's okay. It would be nice if all vendors were on the same mindset and were willing to collaborate and work together. I feel like we all understand the sacrifice that it takes to be in this industry. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Hmm.
I don't think clients even know like what it takes. Our families don't get to see us on the weekends. If you're in a relationship, your significant other has to see you less. You come home late at night. You get to just get in bed for a few hours before maybe they have to go to work. Like there's lots of things that people don't necessarily know and understand what it takes to be in this industry. And I just think that a little bit more understanding from the client side would be very, very well understood and helpful. Because at the end of the day, we're just not puppets. We're doing this because we're passionate and we love it. But it takes a lot. So I think if vendors were all on the wavelength and clients actually like thought about what it all entailed, it would all just like kind of meld a little bit better.
I guess the word you're looking for here is compassion. Just
Yes, I
compassion.
love that. That's the word I was looking for.
Awesome. All right, Saurabh. So the next segment, as I just said, is rapid fire. So first thing that comes to mind, all easy questions. We'll start with an easy one here. Tea or coffee?
Mm, coffee,
Coffee.
Okay.
Okay.
Mountains or beaches?
beaches.
All right. Morning person or night owl?
I would like to be a morning person, but unfortunately, I'm a night owl.
I think that works in your favor with with
Yeah,
MCing.
yeah.
Got it. What's your favorite comfort food?
Uh, baked ziti.
Ooh. Okay. That's good.
Nice. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Um, people who don't text first.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay. All right. Um, what's your secret superpower?
Um, being able to generate charisma out of nowhere.
Okay. That probably
sometimes,
serves you really
sometimes,
well with
sometimes you're
MCing.
sick. Sometimes you're not feeling it, but you gotta bring your A game.
Wow.
So do
Yeah.
you have like a ritual to get into that zone to be able to do that, or just unscripted, just comes naturally?
Uh, a lot of it does come naturally, but I do, bump music in my car before an event. Some of my favorite stuff, and get in the zone.
Got it. Okay.
Makes sense. Wow. What's a superpower you wish you had? And this can be unrealistic.
Um, decisiveness,
Hmm. Interesting.
Okay.
being able to make decisions more firmly as opposed to on a whim.
Okay. You anything like a superpower, like an unrealistic one, so like flying or
Oh,
something like that?
uh, hmm. I really like that movie Jumper, where he jumps from place to place. So maybe like teleportation would be really nice.
Oh, yeah, I remember that movie. It's like what 2006 or something. That was a good
Mm,
movie.
good
So
movie.
Deepa, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a great movie because like the guy could just teleport to like Paris or to the top of the Empire State Building, like wherever he wants. So it's pretty cool.
All he needed to do was look at the photo.
Wow.
Yes, I forgot about that part. You're right. You need to see. You have to have seen it before.
Hmm.
Right. Oh my God. I would never be home if I had a superpower. Okay. What's been your biggest accomplishment in last 1 or 2 years?
Building and establishing a company.
Awesome. Yeah. That's a huge deal, and kudos to you for being able to do that. Um, I guess this is not a rapid fire, but what's really next for you?
I ask myself that same question all the time. I feel like I'm at a very pivotal moment,
Mm-hmm.
and I do think that the world is changing very rapidly. That's why I jumped into sort of AI, just to be on the forefront of technology. I think the world that we know it today is just 5 years from now is going to be very different. Um, you know, in many ways, just the way that we do very simple things. Go to the grocery store, what kind of cars we drive,
Mm-hmm.
how we interact via email or communications. Um, so, yeah, I,
Amazing.
sorry, did I answer the question?
Let's see. Um, maybe we can recap really quickly, and you could just summarize what's next for you, if you don't mind.
I, I think continuing on this
Yeah.
AI wave and
Uh-huh.
utilizing it in any sort of way. If any additional side hustles come out of this automation AI wave, that's
Yeah.
that's what I'd like to do next. Otherwise, I'm gonna work on some throwbacks with like a little beat on it, and I'm gonna start dropping some tracks because I find it so enriching. I love it, and I want to get into it, and I think that's my next wave. I'm gonna drop this new project, and
Mm-hmm.
then and then that's what I'm gonna do next.
I have an idea for you from an
Yeah.
AI perspective and combining it with the wedding industry, but I at least I have not heard of an AI specifically for South Asian weddings. So for example, people like having like a schedule, so you can have like the schedule created leveraging AI, basic templates you can prompt. When it comes to booking vendors, you can set a price budget and it finds you the best highly rated vendors for different things, whether it's decor and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's like you upload a couple of pictures and it gets an idea of the type of theme you want, color scheme, style, etc. Gets you the vendors that can satisfy that, something like that. Because at least to my knowledge, there's nothing like that that exists today, and
Mhm.
the South Asian in general wedding industry is huge. All around the
Yeah.
country, there's so many hubs, right? You have New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. You have the Miami hub, the Mexico hub with Cancun and all that. You have Texas, right? So Dallas, Houston, Austin. You have the West Coast, even Vegas. So there's a lot of major hubs for South Asian weddings around the country. I think that could be huge.
Shh, keep it on the low, okay? We'll implement it. We'll implement it slowly. No, that's a great idea. Definitely a
Yeah,
great idea. Yeah, let's see what the technology can bring and what we can do next.
Yeah. And
got
then
it.
if we're the developers of it, whoever comes up with it, right, whoever builds it, you can have it prioritize Shiro's entertainment.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Put us up front, number one
Exactly.
recommendation.
It's like, oh, you're in
Uh,
the tri-state area, like first recommendation Shiro's, then everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It is funny because I think in certain aspects, certain parts of the industry has actually been monopolized. Most recently, like the Knot and Wedding Wire, which are two of the biggest review sites, they actually
hmm.
like combined and formed into like the Knot company. Um, they were purchased. So there needs to be a little bit of stimulus in the industry to kind of like knock that into the next hemisphere. So maybe AI is the future wave there.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. All right, so Sora, we are actually towards the end of our discussion. Before we wrap, do you have any recommendations for our listeners? A recommendation could be any piece of media, a book, movie, podcast, or it could be a general advice as well.
Yeah, sure. To all the future brides and grooms, I would just recommend you reach out to your vendors 8 to 12 months in advance. You know, I would, comprehensively do your research and make sure that the DJ that you're booking, not only do they have like a nice looking Instagram page, but also that you're checking out their mixes and their mixes have the quality of mixing capability that you're looking for. Um, if I could recommend any sort of media, I liked White Lotus a lot. That's on HBO Max. I
Mm-hmm.
actually just came back. I mean, when you go to Cancun, that's like an all-inclusive resort, right? So I love watching that because it's all about the all-inclusive life.
Right.
So I would check out White Lotus. I haven't been. I would love to do a little bit more reading. I haven't been doing too much reading, but my favorite book is The Kite Runner. So if you haven't read that, read that. And then if you guys are checking out new artists and you haven't heard of Jai Wolf, I would listen to Jai Wolf and some of his new music. He's actually going on tour. It's called the Blue Babu Tour. So I'll be
Okay,
I'll
really
be
cool.
there at the Brooklyn Mirage late October. Was it late August? August 28th. He'll be there. So
Okay.
Awesome.
And we also wanted to give you an opportunity to plug in the social media profiles or handles. So if you want to quickly share your socials for our listeners here.
cool. Yeah. So once again, my name's Sorab. You can check me out on Instagram at Sorocme. That's Srocme. You can check out Sharose International at Sharose International. I also run a entertainment company called Cosimo Group. Cosimo Group does a lot of our public-facing events, so bars, clubs, lounges, and concerts, festivals coming up in the future. Um, that is just Kosimo Group, and I think that's pretty much it. Check out my music. It's all in my link tree in my bio on Instagram. You can just type in my name on Spotify or Apple Music. It'll come up Sorab. And new project coming out this summer. It's going to be called Under Over. So look forward to that. And thanks for having me on the show, guys. I appreciate it. And this was a lot of fun.
All right, fantastic. And for those of you that are already not connected with Your Life Unfiltered, please be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and on YouTube. It's again at Your Life Unfiltered on Instagram, and you can just search Your Life Unfiltered on YouTube as well, and you will find us. All right. With that, Sorab, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on and learn your story, as well as all the different ideas you had about the nostalgia factor and all that kind of stuff. For all of you listening, thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
Appreciate you
everybody.
guys. Take care. Farewell, and thanks a lot. Catch you soon.